Hi, welcome back to the farm. My name's Roz, also known as Passion Flower, and you'll find me here each week talking about my farming and creative life. Another misty, rainy day here on the farm. The sheep are crazily barring at me outside, wanting me to spend time with them. I just wish I'd go into their shelter and then I wouldn't have to worry. But no, they are out in the rain. Not something that I'm planning to do after this. I'm going to record and then I've got a few yarn things to do here at the shed, and I'm hoping that I can find a gap in the rain that I can get back over to the house. I've tried a new way of feeding the sheep this week. I was finding it really difficult with giving them grain. They were getting so excited about it and they would crowd the gate, and it was really difficult to get in and away from the gate so that I could put the buckets down for them. So what I've tried is actually setting up some containers just inside along the fence line, and then getting scoops and tipping it into each of the containers for them. It's kind of working. Because they're not secured in place, they tend to tip them over a little bit. And I also kind of need to make sure that I spread it out over the three and then go back and refill, because they all obviously want the first one and I can't fill up all three at the one time. Uh, but I think it's actually working really well because it is getting them away from the gate. I don't have to force my way in to the paddock, deal with Vito's horns and everyone else getting frustrated while I'm trying to shut the gate and have the buckets in my hand and all that sort of thing. So I think I might investigate some options of what I could do in terms of getting some kind of feeder tray set up that hangs on the fence, that's in just inside the fence line, so that I can tip the grain in across. I think I just need to have something that was sort of a little bit wide and reasonably long so all three of them could like stand at the one trough, and have a couple of holes up through it so that it doesn't fill with water. And then I can just go along and pour the grain through, and they will be able to come and each have their own spot at the feeder. They obviously all buck each other out of the way and want to get the most of the food and think that they're not in the best spot and all that kind of thing. But I think that might be an easier way than my 3 bucket system, which as one person and 3 buckets is very difficult to manage. And then also it makes it easier for me because once they're feeding, then I can open the gate and get in and deal with other stuff and not have them crowd around at me while I'm trying to get into the paddock. We've also got some new family pets. We've had them for a few weeks, but I thought that I would wait until they've settled in a little bit and we've sort of experienced what they're like before I had a little chat about them here. We've got 3 guinea pigs. Um, we've moved the television out of our lounge room, so now we sort of focus around the fire. And then just recently, my sister bought a very large guinea pig enclosure. It's like 3 stories and it's pretty fancy. They can move up and down and there's little holes and all that kind of thing. And we now have these 3 guinea pigs who have really started to come out of their shell. They were very, very scared of us for the first little bit. But now they're almost at the point where you put their food down and they're like literally on top of it before you even close the door to the enclosure. So they're getting much more used to us, used to our noises, and they've become our entertainment in the evenings because we can sit and watch them run around and drink their water and eat their food, and they're quite little characters. Some more yarn dyeing this week, which has been really great. And I had a couple of sunny, still cold, but sunny and breezy days this week. So I was able to have the yarn in here and get it dry by having the doors open and the sun shining in through the glass. So this week I dyed up azalea, wattle, dusty rose and pansy. So that's almost all of my flower colorways dyed up. The only colors I didn't dye up this time were nasturtium and flowering gum. I've still got a few extras of those from my last dye session. Those colors haven't been as popular this time, which is strange because they were the most popular the time before, so I dyed extras. So it swings and merry-go-rounds, and so now I've kind of got full batches of pretty much all of the flowers, and I will then start to dye up some different colors this coming week. I also threw enough yarn into the dye pots to make myself a Douglas cardigan. So I did a quick little dye of that yarn as well. I'm trying out a different colorway. A technique that I was using for one of my flower colorways. I wanted something that was fairly neutral color wise, but that sort of reflected me. So it's sort of like blues and purples, but with a sort of a grey black kind of over dye over the rest of it. So it's not a stark white, the rest of the yarn. It is drying. Actually, let me see if any of it is dry and I can show you right now. It's not quite dry, but it's probably close enough to be able to show you. So it is like a blue purple in little pops throughout, and then it's a sort of a grey, black, brown over the rest of the skein. So I am going to make myself a Douglas cardigan once this is dry and skeined up. So that's not going to be a short project, but you'll be seeing the progress here. And if the colorway is as I hope, then I will be releasing it as a colorway, and it will be available either as a dyed to order, so you can get like a cardigan batch for yourself, or and I'll also probably have some skeins just ready to ship in the shop as well. I've also been getting ready for my next batch of sock classes that will be happening. There is one this weekend at Unwind. I've got another one next month, and there are new dates that have just been released for August and September. So if you're watching this in June of 2022, pop on over to the Unwind website and you'll be able to see those dates and book yourself into the sock class if you're interested. I showed you last week my new Swift and my new ball winder, and I've set those up and I've been using them this week. The Swift is just an absolute game changer. It's been so much easier with that Swift. It is easier to put up and down. It's not sagging and dropping like the old one was, and it runs really smoothly. So that's been really great. The ball winder has been a little bit of a learning curve. It's really good, don't get me wrong, but it's just different to what I was using before. So it's taking a little bit of getting used to. My first initial thoughts was that I had made a mistake and bought the wrong thing, because it appeared like it was going to be just set up for right-handed use. It sits flat on the table and it has a clamp that goes across it, and it's got like a little Knit Pro branding that faces a particular way. And I thought that it may not be able to clamp the other way, which means that I wouldn't be able to use my left hand for it. And I was like, oh God, what am I going to do? This is going to be a disaster. But I realized that the little groove for the clamp actually went all the way across the base. So I was able to clamp it the reverse way to how most people would use it. So on my left-hand side, I have the winding part, then the actual spool where the ball goes, the feeder, and then across the other side on my right, I have my Swift. And that works for me in terms of my setup. But it looks like it's backwards. But it works perfectly fine. It does work the way I wind it. So I'm getting used to winding it. My old Royal ball winder was an old plastic one, and it winds around like that. So the crank sort of sits out and it winds around. This one is a tabletop version. So instead of winding this way, you're actually winding like that. So it's a different movement. I'm sort of having to use my wrist more, and it winds that way. And it feels like it takes longer. I don't know if it does. Haven't timed between the two, but because it's for a big ball, and the way that it's tensioned, it feels like there's more twists to get the yarn onto the ball winder. Don't know. Winding, just that different winding motion is making my arm a little bit sore. I'll get used to it because I can do all of the other movements that I've been doing for a really long time without any aches or getting tired. Like my old ball winder, I can just go for ages and it's totally fine. The other thing that I've found is there's a bit of a learning curve getting the tension and the speed of the winding right so that you get a really lovely ball that stays solid, but that pulls out of the center nice and easily without getting a big yarn bath. The first few times I wound it, it started at a point, and then because I stopped and it started at a different point, and I ended up getting a bit of a tangled yarn bath that came out of the middle because I was kind of testing to see how it was working. So you need to be really slow and consistent to start with. Make sure that you don't pause or stop, especially near the start, so that you get a nice solid center to your ball and that it doesn't get tangled up. It looks quite different. It's a much taller ball than my previous one, and it sort of it's concave to begin with and slightly taller, whereas the ones that I had before were sort of more flat and quite round. But as you start to pull the yarn from it, it kind of does flatten itself out and becomes a little bit more compact. So it's just interesting how they look quite different. Also, because I've gotten the mega ball winder, which I said I really needed for those bigger projects, and I'll need it for DK yarn, and I will need it for my spinning because I get a lot more yardage onto a bobbin than a 100-gram skein. So I wanted the mega size, but for less than 100 grams of fingering weight especially, the balls kind of stay out. They don't kind of plump back in on themselves, and you end up with a big hole in the center, and they don't hold quite so well. So I think what I will do is continue to use my small Royal ball winder, the little plastic one, for those smaller jobs. And then use the big Knit Pro Mega for those full skeins and larger projects. So I will end up using them interchangeably depending on what I am winding. And I think that's a really good way to make sure that I get the best use out of all of my tools. This week I am wearing a brioche cowl. The yarn is by Colleen's Crafts. It was a huge ball of rainbow yarn that she had at Bendigo Sheep and Wool Show a few years ago, and I just could not help myself. We visited the stall in the morning and I saw that ball of yarn and I thought it looked really cool. Wandered around, it was still there when I came back in the afternoon, so I knew that it was mine and I just had to get it. This cowl is wrapped around about 4 or 5 times. It's really thick and snuggly around my neck. It's lovely and warm, and it's been a really good one to use around the farm on cold days. I can put my coat over, and this keeps me all warm and cozy. It is longer than I am tall. It is huge, but I love it, and I've still got a lot of this yarn left, so it will end up going into another project, probably something that will match at some point. I'll leave a link below to the pattern that I used. It's a Pearl Soho pattern. I finished the bed socks for my dad, and I gifted them to him this week. They were also out of Colleen's Crafts in a green Corriedale silk mix. Then I added in a sock yarn for the heels that I held double. So they are done, and he tried them on and they fit, so I'm really pleased with those. So of course I have cast on another pair of socks. I've gone back to the stripy yarn that I have already knit one pair of socks out of. I'm not going to worry about matching stripes with this pair. I'm just going to knit one sock, and then I will just knit a second sock and just roughly guess in terms of getting the number of rows and everything right, just based on my own foot. So that is my current sock project. And I got a couple more rows done on the Painting Honeycombs shawl. I put a marker in this week, so you can see I've done, was it 3 more rows? I'm almost out of my first ball of hand spun. I've got this tiny little bit left. So I will very soon be starting on my second ball, which I'm really excited about because we start to get into some much brighter colours than has been in this shawl so far. So it's going to really start to pop with those bright colours through. Well, that's it for another week. Thanks for spending some time with me. If you're enjoying these videos, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And I look forward to seeing you next week on the farm. Bye.